Have you ever been in one of those situations a job interview where you just go totally blank
Oh,
and you
yeah.
can't think of the words you need?
Oh, absolutely.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be talking about some powerful phrases that we can use on the IELTS speaking exam.
Okay.
And, I think even for native speakers, sometimes it's hard to sound sophisticated
Right.
and make sure we're communicating clearly. So these tips can be helpful for everyone, I think.
Definitely.
So we're going beyond simple vocabulary here. We're going to unpack how to use these phrases.
Yeah.
But before we get into the phrases, can you tell us a little bit about the IELTS exam?
Sure. So the IELTS exam is the International English Language Testing System, and it's really important for people who want to study or work abroad.
Okay.
A lot of universities and employers actually require a certain score on the IELTS exam.
So it's pretty high stakes.
Yes, very high stakes.
And the speaking portion is particularly important.
Absolutely. That's where you really get to show off your fluency and your ability to communicate.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Sounds good.
The first category we have is introducing your opinion.
Right.
What's the strategy behind this?
Well, a lot of times people just say, I think.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to express your opinion that sound more sophisticated and show that you've really thought about the topic.
So like what?
Well, instead of I think, you could say, in my considered opinion.
Okay.
That shows the examiner that you've actually considered different perspectives before forming your own opinion.
I see.
It shows a deeper level of critical thinking, which is exactly what they're looking for.
But wouldn't that sound a bit formal for a speaking exam?
It's all about balance. You don't want to sound too formal, but you also don't want to sound too casual.
Okay, so in my considered opinion,
Right.
what are some other examples?
Well, instead of I believe, you could say it goes without saying that, or I firmly believe that.
I firmly believe.
Yes, it has a nice ring to it, and it shows conviction.
Yeah, it shows that you really mean what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are some good ways to introduce our opinion.
Right.
Now, what about when we agree or disagree with something?
That's where the next category comes in, expressing agreement and disagreement.
Okay.
This is all about navigating those nuances and showing the examiner that you can see both sides of an issue.
So instead of just saying, I agree or I disagree,
Exactly.
what should we say?
Well, if you strongly agree with something, you could say, I wholeheartedly concur with.
I like that. I wholeheartedly concur.
Yes, it shows that you're really listening to the other person and that you understand their point of view.
It's very enthusiastic.
Yes, and if you want to acknowledge the other side but still stand your ground, you could say something like, well, some may argue that I assert that.
I assert that. Okay, that one sounds pretty powerful.
It does. It shows that you're confident in your opinion.
But is there a risk that it could sound too assertive?
It's all about the delivery. If you say it with a smile and a tone that's more like, here's why I think this way, it can actually be quite effective.
Okay, so it's important to be assertive, but also respectful.
Exactly.
Now, what about when you disagree with something?
Well, instead of just saying, I disagree, you could say something like, I must, however, contest the notion that.
I must, however, contest the notion that... So it's like you're acknowledging their argument,
Yes.
but then you're politely pushing back.
Right. It's about presenting a balanced and reasoned argument.
Okay, so we've covered introducing our opinion and expressing agreement and disagreement.
Yes.
What's next?
Next, we have comparisons and contrasts.
Comparisons and contrasts.
This category is all about highlighting the similarities and differences between things,
Okay,
which is a really important skill for critical thinking.
and I'm sure that comes up a lot on the IELTS.
It does. And it also comes up a lot in everyday life.
Like when you're comparing different products.
Exactly. Or when you're trying to make a decision between two options.
So how can we use these phrases to compare and contrast things in a sophisticated way?
Well, instead of just saying, this is different from that, you could say, in stark contrast to,
In stark contrast to,
or this bears a striking resemblance to.
this bears a striking resemblance to.
Good.
I like that one. It's very visual.
Yes, it creates a strong image in the listener's mind.
What are some other examples?
Well, if you're highlighting similarities, you could use phrases like much like or in a similar vein. And when drawing a parallel between two things, you could say, this is akin to, or even, this mirrors the way that.
Those are great.
Yeah.
So we've got some good phrases for introducing our opinion,
Yes.
expressing agreement and disagreement, and making comparisons.
Right.
Now, what about concluding our thoughts?
That's a great question, and that's what we're going to talk about next.
Okay.
How do you wrap up your response in a way that leaves a good impression?
Right, because sometimes it's hard to know how to end a conversation.
It is. So we're going to talk about some powerful phrases for concluding and summarizing.
Okay, I'm ready.
Great. So instead of just saying, so yeah, that's what I think, you could say, in conclusion,
In conclusion, classic.
or ultimately.
Okay.
And if you're aiming for a higher band score, you might try something like, when all is said and done,
When all is said and done.
or to encapsulate.
To encapsulate. I like that one. It's like you're tying everything together.
Exactly. And then there's one more category, advanced connectors and enrichers.
Ooh, what are those?
These are phrases that can add an extra layer of sophistication to your speech.
Oh,
They can make your arguments more nuanced and show off your vocabulary.
so like what kind of phrases are we talking about?
Well, for instance, you could use notwithstanding the aforementioned to acknowledge a point you made earlier.
Notwithstanding the aforementioned.
Or erudite evidence suggests that to introduce a piece of supporting information.
Erudite evidence suggests that. I'm going to have to write that one down.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But is there a danger of overusing these phrases?
That's a great question and something we'll discuss next.
Okay, because I don't want to sound like a robot.
Right. You want to sound natural and authentic.
So stay tuned, listener.
We'll be right back.
We're going to dive into how to practice these phrases and make them sound natural.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance between using powerful language and sounding like yourself.
I can't wait.
Me neither.
Okay, so we've got all these great phrases, but how do we actually practice using them?
Well, one of the best ways to practice is to imagine yourself in the actual exam.
Okay.
Think about the types of questions they might ask, like questions about your hobbies or your plans for the future. And then try to use these phrases to answer those questions.
So we should be creating our own sentences using these phrases,
Exactly.
not just reciting them from a list.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Another good tip is to record yourself while you're practicing.
Oh, I hate listening to my own voice.
I know, but it's really helpful. Well, it allows you to hear how you sound to other people.
Okay.
You might notice that you're speaking too fast or that you're not pronouncing certain words clearly. And then you can work on improving those areas.
So it's like getting feedback on our speaking.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, try it. What else?
Well, one thing that's really important for non-native English speakers is to speak slowly and clearly.
Right.
A lot of times people get nervous and they start speaking really fast.
Yeah.
But it's better to speak slowly and be understood than to speak quickly and be misunderstood.
That's true.
And the examiner will appreciate it if you speak clearly.
Okay, so speak slowly and clearly.
Got it.
Any other advice?
Well, one thing I would caution against is overusing these phrases. It's tempting to try to use them all, but it's important to sound natural and authentic.
Right.
You don't want to sound like you're just reciting a script.
Okay, so use them strategically,
Exactly.
but don't overdo it.
All right.
Okay, I think I'm getting the hang of this.
Yeah.
What about those advanced connectors and enrichers, though?
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, but I'm a little nervous about using them.
Why is that?
I'm worried I'll use them incorrectly or sound like I'm trying too hard.
I understand. But those phrases can really help you to stand out.
I know.
They show that you have a sophisticated vocabulary,
Yeah.
but it's important to use them correctly.
So how do we do that?
Well, let's look at an example.
Okay.
You mentioned the phrase erudite evidence suggests that.
Yeah.
That's a great phrase to use when you're introducing a piece of supporting information.
Like how?
Well, let's say you're talking about the benefits of exercise.
Sure.
You could say, erudite evidence suggests that regular physical activity not only improves physical health, but also enhances cognitive function.
Wow, that sounds impressive.
It does, right?
I can see how that phrase adds a lot of weight to the statement.
Exactly.
But I guess the key is to use it sparingly.
Right. Don't use it in every sentence.
Okay. So we need to find that balance between using these phrases and sounding natural.
Exactly.
Any other tips for sounding natural?
Well, one thing that can really help is to pay attention to your intonation.
Intonation.
Yes, the way you say the words.
Oh, okay.
You don't want to sound like you're reading from a script.
Right.
You want to sound like you're having a conversation.
Okay.
So pay attention to your tone of voice and your pauses,
I see.
and make sure you're stressing the right words.
Okay, so it's not just about the words themselves.
No.
It's also about how we deliver them.
Exactly.
This is really helpful. I feel like I'm learning so much.
I'm glad. Have you ever taken the IELTS exam yourself?
I haven't, but I've done a lot of research on it.
Oh, okay.
And I've also spent a lot of time thinking about how to communicate effectively in different situations.
Like what?
What, like giving presentations at work,
Mm-hmm.
or even just having conversations with friends.
Right.
I think the same principles apply in all of those situations.
Absolutely. You always want to be clear, concise, and engaging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think these phrases can help us to do that.
I agree. They can give us the tools we need to express ourselves confidently and effectively.
Wow. I feel like we've covered so much ground today.
We have. It's been a really great discussion.
I'm definitely feeling more confident about the IELTS speaking exam now.
I'm glad to hear that.
But even beyond the exam, I think these phrases can be helpful in so many different situations.
Absolutely. They're really just good communication skills.
Right. It's all about expressing ourselves clearly and effectively.
Exactly. And I think the more we practice using these phrases, the more natural they'll become.
Yeah. It's like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Exactly. So keep practicing and keep using these phrases, and I'm sure you'll see a difference in your communication skills.
And who knows, maybe you'll even inspire someone else to start using it too.
That would be great.
It's like we're spreading the power of good communication.
I love that idea.
Speaking of the power of communication,
Yes.
I was thinking about something you said earlier about how language is more than just a way to convey information. It's also a way to connect with people and build relationships.
Exactly. And it's a way to make a difference in the world.
That's a really powerful thought.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
Okay.
How can we use language to create positive change in the world?
That's a great question.
It's a big question.
It is, but it's an important one.
Because words have power,
They do.
and we can use that power for good.
Absolutely. So let's all think about how we can use our words to make the world a better place.
I love that. Well, that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into knowledge.
Until then, keep learning and keep exploring.
And remember, speak slowly, speak confidently, and let your brilliance shine through.